average man on the street, man or woman on the street, involved in this process. And I want us to take it there now, because our culture and our heritage, as I said before, has been the platform for many to enjoy economically. And many who are at the root of it, or I can speak, for example, of the Maroons in Jamaica, for example, with significant culture and heritage and history, seem not to be able to make the type of economic returns from what they're all about. But we see the others taking off. I want to throw this back to Wilson now.
Yes, first of all...
No, I didn't tell you what I want to talk about. I know you have a long dissertation on this. This is a man who knows about this thing, etc. The person Wilson in the diaspora, who is now looking to build out their experiences in this whole tourism conundrum that is just taking off and leaving us behind. Heritage tourism seems to be something that we still have a hold to. How do we make money from it? Let's get real now. Let's put the rubber to the road here now. Are we talking about public-private entrepreneur? Talk to us about that.
Well, first of all, there must be an educational process before we can even move forward. And through that process, we will understand who the cultural tourists are, because we do not want to waste time marketing to everyone. Secondly, we have to ask ourselves, what is in it for us? Now, the Caribbean relies heavily on remittances. If we can engage in the development of cultural and heritage tourism, create greater prosperity back at home, then there will not be the need for us to be sending as much remittances to our family as we are currently doing. So in other words, you ask the Caribbean person, what is in it for them? One, they will have more economic resources which they can now divert to serious investments instead of sending it back home strictly for consumer purposes. Once we have gotten over that bridge, because the cultural and heritage tourism owners are some of the most difficult to educate. Once we have gotten over that bridge, now we have to create marketing vehicles. We are talkers, Caribbean people. There are no smooth talkers than any other Caribbean person. We have been doing it for decades. We have been sending people back home. But how can we do it in a formalized fashion, whereby it can be measurable? You know that we have sent X number to the Caribbean to visit cultural and heritage tourism. What mechanism can we put in place in order for us to be able to measure and identify the marketing thrust of our people in the diaspora? And thirdly, in terms of investments, there are cultural and heritage tourism brokers out there pushing our cultural and heritage tourism sites away from us. How do we now focus on going back home and telling grandma, grandpa, that thing you have there is not bush. That's a serious heritage tourism site you have there. That could end all the poverty that has been in our generations for life. But no, we have them being listed out, we have them being taken over, but we have to be realistic, because by under-commercializing them, they turn out to be non-profitable, put stress on the family. So we need to get a professional approach towards the development of cultural and heritage tourism.
Thank you. Hold that point, because you said we're smooth talkers, and I don't want you to make it real here tonight that we are truly smooth talkers. I want to bring in the Minister of Tourism and Information Broadcasting from St. Lucia, Honorable Dominic Fidi. Just to ask him, where does government factor into this whole situation? How do we now get government to either put in the infrastructure to encourage this whole process? Because this can't happen without the participation of government, one way or another. Talk to us.
Well, I'm very pleased that CTO is organizing this, because I think for a long time, I think for a long time the Caribbean has been so addicted to the sun, sand, and the sea phenomenon. So it's really, really good to see. And I think that what's driving this is the market. The market is saying that people are looking for new experiences, and therefore the Caribbean, we are forced to somehow come up with new opportunities for people to come to our country. And so our heritage is now being sought after, and we're looking at this opportunity. But to answer your question more specifically, I think that first there must be an appreciation by the various governments that culture and heritage tourism, they do have a significant role to play. In our own experience in St. Lucia, we have just allocated significant sums in our budget to develop our villages. So I have the good fortune of being the first minister to preside over a village tourism project where we will be going where we will be going into focusing on 8 of our strongest villages and leverage very potently their cultural assets to see how best we can bring them about. I've been very disappointed in how we have sold ourselves in the world, and I think that sometimes what happens is that we don't believe in ourselves as Caribbean people. I was quite pleased when I went to Trinidad, and I had the experience to visit a carnival mass camp. And I thought to myself, why don't we, for example, reproduce the carnival experience every day in the year? Why don't we think that mini carnivals in our respective jurisdictions would add value to the tourism experience of all of our visitors? And so I think that it is governments that have to ensure that we project cultural and heritage tourism policy. We must be very deliberate in ensuring not just the traditional tourism segments, but we must ensure that culture and heritage is at the forefront. I want to mention Fawley Plantation. It's owned by a St. Lucian man who actually took over his father's estate. And his story is that everyone thought that he was mad when he went into Castries, the capital, and bought all of these chattel houses. And some of these houses are 75 years old. And he bought them and brought them back into a cocoa plantation to the south of the island, the southwestern corner of the island called Soufrière. And what he did was, he actually restored them and elevated them and built villas. And then Prince Charles and Camilla came and stayed at his estate. And then everyone appreciated the value of cultural tourism. His price went from the floor to the roof. And that is an experience of, that is an example of how potent and strong the culture of the Caribbean can generate significant sums to the tourism industry, to the economies of the region. And I think that we're on the right track. Today is a great opportunity for us to stimulate this rather important subsector. So well done, you.
All right. Thank you very much. Marshall, one of the things we cannot leave here tonight, Marshall, and not make sure that this becomes part of the dialogue. I am old, and you're like, what, millennial?
I'm not quite millennial.
Whatever, young people. We have to make sure that our younger generation is part of this. And maybe, we need to engage Shirley and ask her, what's really going on there? What do you hear is happening out there? How are young people from Caribbean stock dealing with culture and heritage, apart from the music and food?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's definitely carnival and music, I would say, is a common denominator. And one of the trends that we're seeing is that we're moving in groups, right? And so you're seeing also that people are curating experiences, and people have asked me, particularly in the last year, why isn't Caribbean doing a trip? And I want to go to the Caribbean with you, Shelley, and with Caribbean to really experience authentic Caribbean culture. Like, where are you liming? Where are you eating? What are you doing while you're in the Caribbean? And there are lots of shops that are coming up that are like that. So one of the things, just to your point earlier, that I think that we can do is also look to tastemakers, influencers, whether they're younger or older, right? Because there's a myriad of experiences out there, and say, okay, how are we going to create a dance hall experience? How are we going to create a carnival experience? And how are we going to create a culinary experience? There are we can come up with dozens and dozens of experiences, but who is going to curate that? And who are the influencers who can actually aggregate a group of people and also take that online and be able to share that experience with the world so that when they're on that trip, they're sharing and hashtagging and, at CTO or, Caribbean Week, and they're saying, look, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm eating, this is what I'm experiencing, this is cool, and by default, like a huge hashtag on Instagram is Caribbean Life. Right? I mean, it's huge. You guys take out your phones, go to Instagram, just search Caribbean Life, and you'll see there are thousands, maybe tens of thousands of posts, right? So how can we leverage those assets and really start to attract younger audiences? Because that's what people want. People want to connect and be in these groups of people who are influential and who are going to take them on a particular path. And they may go off on their own, but I think that's a huge opportunity that we can actually capitalize on in the near future.
Another hashtag I want to encourage you to use, because I really believe in being strong, loud, and proud about who we are, and that is I grew up where you vacation. I absolutely love that hashtag. Now, I just want to jump on the back, and one of you guys you can follow up with what you were going to say, but I do think it might tie into what I'm about to mention. And you mentioned earlier about the brokers who are marketing our product away from us. And I met with a really interesting group of people here in New York. They formed an organization called Visit.org. They're alumni from Columbia, and right now they're fast becoming the largest sustainable booking site. When you hear millennials talk about travel, the buzzword is responsible travel. They want to travel responsibly. They're very conscious about where their dollars are being spent, and they're demanding that their dollars go back into the community. And that's what Visit.org is focused on. And they don't have a large presence in the Caribbean, and they've asked me to partner with them to find tours and organizations that they can send people to in various Caribbean destinations. And I want to hear from you how we can work with these individuals, because their offering is a smaller offering. And we find that the big hotels and so on, they're looked after very well, but the individuals, that person, that school that may have a kitchen garden, and there is the tourist who wants to visit that school, they want to participate in that with the students, they want to ensure that they buy those vegetables and that money goes back into the community. Those people may not necessarily be getting the marketing and the publicity that they need. So how do we begin to make them more visible so that a Visit.org can start marketing them and getting these millennials and other tourists who are interested in traveling responsibly to these places that are otherwise unseen?
I would say train them and put them online, right? I mean, it's pretty easy. So, if they're ready to, if you're going to have them receiving international tourists, make sure that they have the training that they need and that they're actually able to monetize, whether that's accepting credit card payments, or they have the service levels or the accommodations or the certifications that they need in order to accept international visitors. And then I would say the second step is just put them online, right? So someone needs to be, at a country level or at a local level, be aggregating those assets and then putting them online, and then also making sure that they're equipped to do their own social media and digital marketing.
Greetings, everyone. I'd like to commend the Caribbean Tourism Board for having this forum, so those of us little people in the community can come and voice our concerns. I personally don't think there is a Caribbean culture. There is an African culture in the Caribbean. There's a Chinese culture. There are white folks culture. There's Indian culture. There are different cultures. I, as a youngster, as an old man, grew up in the Caribbean, and I've seen how these different groups, how they operate around their culture. We, as the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey once said to us, that a people without the knowledge of their past, history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. We cannot run around this place trying to be a part of everybody else's culture and ignoring the African culture. When we talk about culture, heritage, and culture in the Caribbean, everybody wants to forget the African part of our heritage and our culture. Why is that so? We are trying to reach out to the world, to come to our country. When I was a youngster growing up, I used to think that tourism is something that other people come to your country